Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I've got a video for you about planned obsolescence. If you don't know what planned obsolescence is, you should really take a listen because this is something that is 100% going to affect you in every single thing that you purchase in your life. The gameplay that you're seeing is something that you've seen a little bit of on the Ameli in depth. This is me using the Ameli with a thermal sight, quick draw grip, and I think I'm also using the foregrip. Got the electric camo going on from the DLC. The gameplay is excellent. Usually I don't have great gameplay for the channel because I'm not like a pub star or pro player or anything, but I managed to go like 65 and 11 with like some 10 and 15 streaks. Very, very good stuff. I think you're going to like it. Let's talk about planned obsolescence because that's the topic of this commentary. That's what's important here. And planned obsolescence is basically designing something such that it will break or be obsolete within a certain period of time. And I would say that most of the things in your house, most of the things that you own are built with planned obsolescence in mind. I'm going to give you a brief history and then I'm going to talk about how it's affecting our world today. It started out with the Ford and General Motors competition. The Ford made the Model T. Every single year it was made as good as possible, as efficiently as possible, and it was made to last a long time. It only came in one color too. General Motors came along and they had this brilliant sort of marketing overall business strategy that what we're going to do is we're going to make a new car every single year. Every single year there's going to be a different design, a different styled car, and the actual mechanics, engineering, safety, all that stuff in the car didn't change very much, but the outside changed a lot. Or even a little bit, but from year to year the looks would change and drift, and it gave consumers the impression that they were getting a brand new super special or impressive car when, you know, the actual insides of the car are not very different. Ford didn't think very much of this idea and he didn't think it would catch on, but it really did. People responded to it really well. They bought new cars very frequently. They would sell their old car just a couple of years old and buy a new one because it looks newer, and because of this they were turning over cars way faster, and they realized that the average lifespan of a General Motors car was not necessarily the same thing as a Ford, so we didn't have to build it to last as long because like 80% of the customers would trade it in or get a new one within a certain number of years, a certain period of time, and that's just kind of how it worked. Now Ford lost this battle. Ford and all the other car companies today now make a new model car every single year. General Motors won, and the trend continues. General Motors is the pioneer and current master of planned obsolescence, and it's also one of the things that managed to hurt their company when they almost went under and had to get a government bailout, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The idea became very popular, especially after World War II, where quality engineering wasn't needed. During the war, we needed the best, absolute greatest stuff we could get, or at least the most mass-produced, if you want to talk about Sherman tanks and things like that. But after the war, we had a big economic boom. We had a big explosion in culture and fashion, world knowledge, all these sort of things. And with the economic boom, we had much higher disposable income, much higher vacation time. The average American was owning a car, they were traveling, and we needed a lot more disposable goods. They were just things, there were a lot more one-time purchases. Back in the day, the Depression era, the old, like your old great-grandparents or grandparents era, they bought something and they saved for it forever. It had to last like 10 years and it had to be the best thing they could possibly get. In the new America, it didn't really matter. Some people would go on a vacation and buy a canoe that they'd only need to use once, or they would buy a piece of cooking equipment like a blender or a toaster or something that they would use a couple of times a year, and it didn't really need to be made to be that good. And also with the, you know, cultural expansion, we had fashion trends that moved very, very fast. They didn't move quite as fast back in the day. We definitely had fashion trends, but clothing, interior design, furniture, cars, media, all of that was moving very, very fast, and the fashion cycle was accelerating, so we got a lot more products that were designed with planned obsolescence in mind, and it was done that way just because it was cheaper. Basically, I mean, it's just cheaper and nobody's going to use it for so long, so why not just make something you can sell at a lesser price and sell more of them? It makes total sense, and now the trend has continued, it's accelerated, and pretty much all of the goods that we buy these days are built with, in some degree, planned obsolescence in mind. They are built to last a certain period, like a certain lifetime, and then they're going to go bad and die, and that's just going to be too bad. And generally speaking, that's why products don't last as long today. There's also Chinese manufacturing, but Chinese manufacturing is the exact same thing as planned obsolescence. The manufacturers there know exactly how long they need to make it, and I've been going on this commentary, and it probably sounds like this is an awful thing, like this is a bad thing and it's terrible. It can very much so be a good thing, and I've got 3 examples for you of good planned obsolescences. The first one, if you're a parent or if you remember your childhood well, we'll say dollar store toys or very cheap toys, Walmart, whatever you want to go, but we'll use dollar store toys because I used to get these things. The dollar store toys were the cheapest, crappiest toys that you could get, and they were designed to last like an afternoon. maybe a day. The dollar store toys were $1. They were designed to appease the child, to get them to cooperate in the store, and most of these toys were really annoying. Dart guns, whistles, loud things, things that would shoot, pop, go kabang. And the parents really didn't want these things to last forever. Imagine if you bought your child a dart gun that just would not break and you just kept shooting darts at you for months and months and months, or a whistle that just wouldn't crack. They were designed to break at a parent's patience, and they were designed at a price of $1 to keep the child happy. Fashion trends are another big one. Clothes wear out about the time the trend dies. Most of the clothes that we buy today, like the more fashionable the clothes, with the exception of women's purses, which is kind of an oddity because those are designed to last longer, the clothes will generally start to fray, fall apart, not be as quality about the time that the designer expects the fashion to no longer be fashionable, because most people won't wear it, and if they wanted to make it to last longer, it would cost more and cost the end consumer more. So it's good that they get the cheaper clothes and that they don't last, until the end of time. And also electronics. Electronics move very incredibly fast. They get outdated. Like the computer that I have now will not be able to do hardly anything useful in a couple of years, unless of course I upgrade it or whatever. This phone right here, this is almost 2 years old. I got a 2-year contract, and lo and behold, my phone is lasting me about 2 years. They kind of probably wanted to give me a free phone and a new contract in about 2 years. And that's not a bad thing, because this phone, even though it's only 2 years old, is already falling behind. It's not as up to date, not as good, not new, and we need to constantly be moving our electronics. And you're going to be like, okay, well, how is this good? Yeah, I get it that you move through it good, but it's good because generally speaking, the better you make something, the more it will cost. We all want well-made goods, but we don't like overpaying for things or paying for a lot for something we don't use. And the opposite is also true. Generally speaking, the poorer quality the thing is, the less lifetime that it has, the cheaper it is. And that is the number one most important thing to the consumer, is that the goods are cheap. I mean, we love cheap things. That's the most important thing we look at when we're shopping for something, is the price. And why would we want to buy expensive short-term items? Why do I want to get the expensive version of something that I'm only going to use a few times, or it's only going to last a few years or something like that? So in doing this, it saves the consumer a lot of money, at least up front. We'll talk about the long-term consequences later on, but your upfront expenditures are far less, and especially if you're doing one-time or convenience purchasing, you don't have to spend as much. Like previously, we'll use the canoe example that we talked about earlier. If you went on a vacation and you wanted to, let's say you couldn't rent a canoe for whatever reason, you just had to buy one. Previously, you would have to buy this really expensive, handmade, beautiful craftsman canoe that was made by experts and would last, forever and ever, and you would spend a lot of your income on it, and you wouldn't use it but a couple of times. It's also a white person joke, but I'll tell you that one later. Nowadays, you can just go buy a cheap plastic one from China that costs you an amount of income that you would consider disposable or negligent. Use it once, maybe a couple other times if you keep it around and take care of it, and then it'll fall apart, and who cares? You get another one. It's not such a big deal. And we cut costs on these kind of things in 3 ways. If you want to know how this works, the number one thing that you'll see most often is just inferior materials. You just have materials that aren't going to last as long. They'll bend, they'll break under pressure, they're thinner, they're cheaper, they're plastic. They can't handle heat or whatever because they're not really made for these environments, and people aren't going to use them long, so who cares? So the materials are cheap. Cheap materials do not last as long, and they don't cost nearly as much. That's kind of how it works. The next one is poor tolerances. Something that a tolerance is how neatly something fits together. Something that's really loose or bangs around a lot or not designed properly can wear and tear faster and break apart. And in a similar kind of thing, some products are actually built with stress points, things that you bend and break. They have square corners instead of round ones because those take stresses differently, and the square ones will break. You'll see, if next time you get on an airplane, see how many square corners there are. There's not very many because those are designed not to break. And in doing so, they're going to live less cycles. They're not going to last as long. But they're way easier to make. It's so much easier to just make this than it is to make a circle. Just kind of how it is. But this can also be a bad thing. Cutting cost is great on convenience purchases, fashion, one-time sort of things, but there's other things to consider. The lifetime products are getting fewer and far between. There's less craftsmen, there's less high quality goods. If you want to get something, the price of the good things has gone up significantly compared to how it used to be, and it's just harder to find in general. And there's some things that you don't want to replace all the time. Like if you want to find something that's going to last you a lifetime, or a really good high quality thing, it's so much harder to find that than it used to be. It used to be very easy to get these sort of products that last forever. I see this especially when I go to my wife's parents' house that have all these goods from before that was a big thing, and they still work now, like 40, 50, 60 years later. It's really, really cool. And there's something worse yet. It's considered exploitive of consumers, depending on how you ask. Now, it's really good that your upfront costs are cheap, and that's great. But if you're constantly replacing something that wouldn't be necessary to replace to begin with, we'll use cars, for example. If cars were engineered to last, 3, 4, 5 times as long, and the price wasn't that much more, which I don't know about because I'm not an automotive engineer, so don't get on to me about that. You could save the consumer a lot of money. They could do other things with their money. They could be buying better goods, investing, all these sort of things, which are good for the people and for the economy. But nowadays, you almost don't have a choice. And going back to the hard to find good things, a lot of times you just have to buy what you can get, and they're all products that aren't going to last very long. They've got a certain, estimated lifespan, and if you want more, that's too bad. Deal with it. You just have to keep spending over and over and over and over. And in the long run, I do feel that you often end up spending more, and that's just kind of how it is. Lastly, perhaps the worst thing yet, or the worst of all, is this accumulates a ton of trash and a ton of waste for the environment. The rate of production, consumption, destruction, waste goes way up. I mean, of course we have to burn oil, gas, resources, pollute, etc. to make the things to begin with. So we've got that pollution added to the environment. Then the things don't last very long. They break, and we have to throw them away and take them to a landfill and let them sit there and rot, and that all seeps into the environment. And our trash accumulation goes way up, and our production, pollution goes way, way, way up. And it's terrible for the environment to produce at this rate, and that is largely because of planned obsolescence. If you wanted something that lasts forever, it would... Now, it might cost pollution to create the one thing to begin with, but since we wouldn't be doing it all the time or nearly on the same volume, it wouldn't be as bad, and we wouldn't be wasting it as much. They wouldn't break as often, we'd have them longer, and overall it would be better for the environment. But we have pros and cons of everything. The upfront costs are cheap. Some things you don't need to last forever. Some things nobody cares about. There is pollution, environmental cost. It changes our society, the way we view things. Planned obsolescence is something that's a part of your life, like it or not. It's there, you're going to have to deal with it, and that's kind of all I can say about it. I mean, it's there. This isn't really an opinion thing, just a little education, and I just want to hear what you have to think about it. If you have an opinion, if you have an interesting insight, something to tell me, leave me a comment down there and tell me what you think about planned obsolescence. Well guys, that's all for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.